Hello and welcome. My name is Jody Lynn Craven, founder of Abundance Consciousness, and this is my dear friend Heather Marie.
Hi, I'm Heather Marie, founder of Soulgate. Welcome to Channel Squared, where we have extraordinary channeled conversations about everyday life topics. Every week, we choose a topic, connect with you, the divine, and our guides, and then channel here with you live.
Yeah, we do. And today we're talking all about doing versus being, the keys to it all. We started this topic by saying there's got to be more to life than just doing. And I think this is a huge topic.
I think so. I think we all get a little caught up in the rat race of life, right? And I think that we are always feeling like we need to be doing something. And to the point of sometimes even what's next, what's next, what's next. I knew somebody once upon a time that was would go on vacation, and it was like, what are we going to do now? What's now? What's next? What's coming up next? And it was never just being in that moment. It was what is next.
I lived a great portion of my life just getting to the next thing, getting to the next thing, getting to the next thing. I never was really ever in these moments. Like I've done some really cool things in my life, but I wasn't present in those moments because I was constantly like, okay, what's next? And where do I got to be? And it takes a toll on your life and your body. And I think you have some really great examples of that. Hey, Heather.
Oh yeah, definitely. In a previous life, not lifetime, but this lifetime previous to my current life, I just made that
Right.
really complicated. Um, I lived a very busy lifestyle. I was traveling a lot for work. I was basically running three businesses simultaneously.
Mhm.
And I was just constantly going, 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 going. And I never spent any time in the right now. When we were talking about this earlier, we were talking about how even things that were very nurturing or nourishing
Mhm.
became a task on my to-do list. So, Wednesday mornings, I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning so I could be on a slack line with my trainer at, quarter to 6. And, then it was going straight from there to my nail appointment that I had a standing 2 week nail appointment. It was nails 1 week, toes and nails the next week. And it was this constant thing. And that day was the busiest day of my week. And my slackline training was something that was fun just for me, but it was a thing that I did, and it was a thing that I like, okay, I did that. Check the box. Okay, on to the nail appointment, go straight from the lesson to the nail appointment. And then I'm like, oh man, I got to be here for 2 hours today instead of just 1 hour because I'm doing my toes too. Okay,
Mhm.
well, while I'm sitting here having my toes done, what can I be checking off my list? Oh, I'll send an email here, I'll make this phone call, I'll do this. And the 2 hours would go by. I would sit in my car. I'm like, okay, what's next on the list? And by the time I would get to the end of my day, it would be 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, whoo, what a productive day.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm frying out my adrenals, taxing my body unbelievably. And it was just unsustainable, you
Mhm.
know? It was unsustainable for me.
For me, it was always kind of the same thing of like I just check. Regardless of how I was feeling, I would show up to do the things that I said I would do, and I would push myself so hard that by the time that I got to Friday, and for sure Saturday, I would want to stare at a wall and drool. Like I remember actually a coach once saying to me, I was you know, having a conversation about personally coaching with her one-on-one, and she was like, why do you want this? And it was all about health and fitness. And I said, I'm really great with my macros and my diet, whatever, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, come Friday night, everything goes to the wayside. Come Saturday, like I would just starve myself until 2 o'clock because everything else was so much more important. And then I would binge eat on garbage because I was so incredibly hungry. And I would go through this period of just I didn't have any energy to hang out with people, or I didn't really want to, and I would force myself and it would kind of make it worse. So I thought hiring her, I could have her keep me accountable so I could force myself to do the things that I needed to do to have the body that I wanted. And she asked me a question, and it was very, very interesting because it was all about health and fitness. And, she had said, so how do you feel that you are so drained physically, mentally, emotionally? You're so exhausted that by the time Saturday rolls around, you're pretty much a vegetable. And I was like, obviously that's not good. And we were talking more on a like an esoteric level. Like how do you feel that your life is this now? Your life is just a constant to-do list, and you're not even enjoying your life. And you're at this point where you can't even take care of yourself for 2 or 3 days a week because you're so exhausted. And at that point I was pretty disappointed in myself, and felt so incredibly unfulfilled, and was going through adrenal fatigue like you were talking about, and all these things that I thought I had to do, or all these things that I thought I wanted to do, or whatever. I wasn't counting myself in. I was just going through the motions. And I said this when we were prepping for our conversation today. I felt like there was always this song playing in my head, and it's a country song, but the gist of it is I rush and rush to get things done. And all I want to do is live and die, but I'm in a hurry and I don't know why. And for everything, I was always in a hurry to get to the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing. And I was missing my life completely.
Yeah, totally. And I think that this is a really common, I don't want to call it a problem because I don't think we should label it as a problem. Some people are highly effective living in that sort of, you know, go, go, go style of life. But,
Do you,
I
I'm going
think
to be
that what,
controversial here. Do you
yeah,
think that, and there might not be an answer to this just question just kind of dropped in. Do you think that they are highly effective, or they've trained their body, their brain, their emotions to kind of fall in line, and therefore they are effective and they're kind of coasting because it's an easy groove?
yeah, I absolutely think that, I mean, and it's funny because that you asked that question because that's kind of where I was going to go with that
Oh,
is, that there are these people that are, highly effective, right? That they've mapped it out and they just follow the map and follow the map and follow the map. And it's just rinse and repeat. But I think when it all comes down to it, at the end of their life, when they're at the jumping off point, are they going to go, thank God I hurried to all of those things and did all that shit and was so effective, right? No, they're going to look at their life and be like, damn, I forgot to love. Shoot, I meant to go to the beach more and put my toes in the sand more. And oh, damn, I really wanted to go ride some roller coasters and I just got too busy. No
Mhm.
one's, you're not going to be remembered by being effective. You're not going to be remembered by all of the things that you necessarily did,
Mhm.
right? and
Mhm.
and you when you get to the point where you're reconciling your life upon the completion of this experience, is your soul going to be happy with what your body performed with? Because that's
Mm.
really what we're talking about here, right? If you're
Mhm.
just doing, are you actually being in your life? Is your
No.
soul going to get to the end and go, I accomplished everything that I came here to experience? Because this human is just here to give the experience to the soul. And does the soul want to experience just doing? and not being in the moment of
Yeah.
the doing.
Well, and if you think about the people who have impacted your life greatly, it's typically not because of something that they did physically for you, something they gave you or provided for you or whatever. It's usually a feeling that you received while you were with them, love that you received from them, or it's something to that nature. It's the way that they made you feel in their presence. And I can only speak for myself when I was in that state. But I could imagine, because I've been with people that are like this, that are constantly like onto the next, they're not really paying attention to you. And it feels crappy when you're in a conversation with somebody and they're not paying attention to you. You know that they're just like looking at their watch, like you've become something on their list that they had to go and do. And it feels yucky. So I can only imagine. I've never asked any of my friends, how did you perceive me in those moments? Like, was I a piece of crap? I didn't have the courage to ask that question. Maybe I should. But I would assume that a lot of it felt like that. Like Jody's just rushing to the next thing and she's not actually paying attention to me, which is not the experience I want to leave the people I love with, or anybody listening to this conversation. I want them to know that I'm fully present. I'm here.
Exactly. And I think that this is where, I mean, look, you and I have done tons of personal development, right? I mean, we are personal development junkies.
Oh, yeah. One day we
And
should
so, I
tally
mean,
up the bill, like the
oh
investments
my
that we've
gosh.
made. That would be interesting.
I know for fact that I'm already well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars and probably a solid 5 or 6 years. If I strung all the time together, five or
Oh,
six
yeah.
years of my life has been spent on, digging deep, figuring out, who are you? What am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? How do I make people feel? Am I being effective in my life? From a spiritual and emotional level. I think that's really interesting that you bring up about other people's perceptions. You know, my mom said something to me one time that really just, you know, poked a big hole in my ego, as mothers
Ah,
do sometimes.
yep.
Darn it. She'd said something to the effect of, I'm getting in the way. I feel like we just get in your way.
Aw.
And I thought, that's horrible. Like, I never want anybody to feel like they're like in the way. Like, they're definitely not in the way. I wouldn't invite people to come be with me if I thought they would be in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really interesting that that was the perception that she was having of me in that time. And so, I really looked at myself and I'm like, why would she have that perception? And I thought, you know what? It's because there's so much going on and there's so much doing. And she is, you know, really good at taking time for herself to make sure that she gets the rest and the downtime that she requires so that she can show up for people.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't how, like the working world perceives that. They may perceive that as being, a potato, like, just being like lazy bones, right? And the thing is that, by not doing and just being, it's recharging so that more doing can occur,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. 100%.
So I think that, by looking at like that and looking at the conversation of how I was making her feel like she was in the way, I decided, you know what? This is just purely I'm doing so much and that's not her jam.
Mm-hmm.
It's not how she feels connection.
Mm-hmm.
She feels connection by just being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just gonna say, similar to that, I for a really long time I would say to myself, I'm doing this for my family. I'm sacrificing time with my family right now to build a business so that I can take care of my family, retire my parents, all of these things that I strived to do. And at some point I started to ask myself, if this is all for my family, how am I'm not even showing that this is for my family. Like, I spend zero time with them or next to no time with them. I don't pay attention to them. If this was really for my family, would I be doing it this way? Like, could I have a different experience? And speaking of poking holes in egos, my dad said to me, probably 5 years ago now, we had a tough conversation, and he said, I don't know what you're trying to prove and to whom, but you have nothing left to prove to me. You're good enough.
Wow. Don't
Yeah.
you just love dads?
Right. Well, he knew that I was struggling with this doing concept of always doing something, always being at work. At that point in time, that 5 years ago, I was working 7 days a week, at least 6 days a week. I would go to the office for 9 a.m. and I would be home most nights at 11, 10, 11, somewhere in there. And I would duplicate that every single day. Saturdays, I would be off earlier. I think I would be done at like 3 or 4. But Sundays I also worked. Like, I had no rest, no downtime. I was constantly going. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that transition period from going from doing to more being and being present and all of those things, and how that can help you. But I know I was stuck there because of a lot of belief systems. Like, if I'm not doing, then I'm lazy.
Totally.
Totally.
Totally, right?
Yeah.
So like let's talk about like social media's role in this, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that this is something that this perpetuates, right? Because people glorify the doing. And
And the
I've had followed,
sacrifice.
and the sacrifice, exactly. It has to be hard. It has to be, you have to give everything you have in order to accomplish XYZ goal that you want. And the thing is that when you give everything of yourself to a business, to a doing aspect, you leave nothing left for your family. You leave nothing left for your relationships. You have nothing left for yourself. So,
Yeah.
back once upon a time, I followed a lot of highly successful people. I mean, we're talking 10-figure earners easily. And, I just thought, oh, I'll just replicate. I'll replicate. Easy peasy. And I was on my way to replicating. And the thing is that going back now and thinking about it, I had literally nothing left to give
Yeah.
because I was always doing something because I was gonna do the grind, right? I mean, they just the social media makes it so easy to just perpetuate this constant state of doing the highlight reel of your life. Oh, we went on vacation and we did this and this and this and this and we did all these things and look at all these pictures and we did all of this. Well, does anybody take a vacation where they just get into a lounge chair, get a cocktail, and just bask in the sunlight? I don't know. Maybe that's a dying vacation thing. But
Maybe.
the thing is like, social media perpetuates this constant productivity, right? This
Mhm.
always doing something to be productive so that you can reach that next huge goal. And I think that is really unfortunate.
Hmm. I would see these pictures of people that I would work with, and they'd be like, only one in the office. And I'd be like, "Ugh, I should be in the office. I should be doing more." There was this belief that if I didn't operate at that level or in that way, that I wouldn't be successful, that I wouldn't make six figures plus, like that, everything would go to hell in a handbasket, to be very specific. If I, took my pedal or my foot off the pedal, that everything would slow down. There was all of these belief systems that were caught up in it, that I needed to walk back essentially, or at least acknowledge. But one of the biggest realizations that I had was how much time I wasted.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I was very productive. And there's only so many phone calls you can make. There's only so much paperwork you can do. There's only so much, whatever it is, fill in the blank, that you can do, that your brain has the capacity to do at a moment. And for me, I got to the point where I was scheduling half an hour increments. And I wasn't scheduling in me at all, like lunch or whatever. There was times in my life where I tasked my assistant to tell me to eat because I wasn't taking care of myself, and she would bring me lunch.
Shoot.
Or, whatever.
There was a time when I had an assistant that was tasked with bringing me lunch and then assisting me with eating it while I worked on something else. Like, no! How pathetic.
Like they would
oh my God.
You?
Yeah. I mean, it was super ridiculous, but I was like so on the go that I was like, okay, I need to respond to all of these, people trying to get in. Can you just cut up my food so that I can just, stab it and eat while I go? I mean, it was just really absurd.
But once I started to step back, I started to see that, I some of these belief systems, like I've got to be the first one in the office, I've got to be the last one to leave. I would do that. And then I would start looking at my day and look at, I got caught up in this conversation around the water cooler here. I got caught up on YouTube over here. I got caught up on Facebook over there. And it's just like, boom, half an hour went by or whatever it was. And that I wasn't effective in those moments. And then I noticed, as I was just reflecting on my day and my week, that I would get less and less effective closest to the weekend because I was exhausted, sheer exhaustion. And it's funny because I got my wisdom teeth pulled out. This is a number of years ago. And it's kind of embarrassing to say this, but I got my wisdom teeth pulled out, and the one dentist messed up, and they were supposed to take all four, and I wasn't going under like general anesthetic or anything like that. They were just keeping me awake with freezing and laughing gas. And so they took out one, but that dentist was supposed to take out all four, and it didn't happen. Anyway, I was like, I'm not doing that again. That was horrific. Being awake for that process, I want to go under. So I had to go to a different dentist. So we went to that dentist. I got everything done. Needless to say, I think something happened when they took the wisdom teeth out. Anyway, they hit my sinuses or something. I'm not a dentist, so I have no idea. I just remember being really stoned on whatever drugs they gave me, and then them trying to explain what was going on and all of that. So, but something happened with the muscles in my face. So as the freezing came out, the muscles on my left side of my face, it came back to life slower than the right side. So they said there could be like permanent paralysis and damage and whatever. And eventually my face went back to normal, as you can see. That was fine. But what I realized after like fast forward years, and now that I've stepped back, when I try to go back into that doing the way that I used to, having like appointment after appointment after appointment after appointment, like just bam, 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 bam. Like when I try and exert that much force, I guess, or talk that much, my left side begins to fail. And that must have been happening all along through all of these appointments. Like I noticed that I start to slur my words and it's harder to talk. It's just fatigue. The muscles are more fatigued. I don't actually know what's going on inside of there, but it wasn't until I slowed down and then tried to speed up again that I noticed that my face was impacted. And I had no idea when I was putting myself through all of that this was happening. I had no conscious recognition that, half of my face was struggling after appointment after appointment after appointment after appointment. So now it's not something that I do. I can't talk all day long. I can't. My body cannot, take it at this point. I know what my boundaries are. But back then, I was so unconscious of how my own body felt that I couldn't even tell that, half of my mouth was starting to like droop and slur and whatever, and that it was difficult. Isn't that crazy?
Wow, that is really interesting. I think that people can probably really relate to this conversation with the physical manifestation of symptoms forcing you to slow down, especially after the shutdowns from the pandemic. So
Yes.
in the beauty industry, who I have a lot of friends and former colleagues that are in the beauty industry. And, beauty in California, like a lot of the personal services, got hit really hard with the shutdowns. And so, they would shut down and then they'd start up and then they'd shut down and then they'd start up. And after a year and a half of this, up and down, but mostly closed the whole time environment, we all got a taste of what it's like to actually slow down and to actually experience and be in our life more and be able to be an active like participant in what our kids are going through or what our spouses are going through, or even just getting to spend a day at the beach once in a while and not arrive there ready to collapse on your towel and die under the basking sun. But the thing is that I think now as people are, um, starting back into their doing, they're starting to realize, I really liked being. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that this is a very timely conversation, that people don't get so wrapped up in their doing that they forget to be in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, you know, when all of this comes to the end of this particular journey in your soul's experience, what is your soul going to say when it gets on the other side? Is it going to say, man, I am so glad I worked my ass off for 150 hours a week? Woo, go me. It's going to
Ah,
go, God dang it. How in the world did I allow that to happen? I was supposed to, you know, meander on the trails, and I was supposed to take pictures of animals, and I was supposed to, do all of these things that were more of being and less of actually doing.
mhm,
I was supposed to find love this time. I was supposed to, be in partnership. I was supposed to learn patience.
mhm.
So how am
Learn
I going
faith.
to have those things if I am constantly going, going, going and doing, doing, doing? You
Mhm.
can't. You just
Yeah.
can't.
We've had this conversation a lot before, Heather, of, the way that we used to be, our former former selves. Um, and how I can only speak for myself, but I we've had this conversation of, for me, I wouldn't have attracted the husband that I have, the love of my life, if I would have stayed in that space. And it's so funny because when he first started coming around, I was transitioning out of the doing into more of the being and really becoming conscious and tapping in. And, God love him for, the ability to ride the wave that I did, and that I continue to, because I'm in constant evolution. Like, thank God for him. Um, but he would go to these events with me and people would be like, Jody's a beast. And I used to be very neurotic, very like, I don't know, like stressed out. I don't know, like, but it was this thing that people built up in their minds that they loved about me, that I was so hardcore and all of these things. So as I made that transition, I had to be okay with shedding that part of me. But I know 1000%, if I was that if I was still that way, in that capacity and doing things that way, that I wouldn't have had a solid relationship with my husband. We wouldn't have ever gotten married because I made no time for anybody. Work was the most important thing. I didn't even make time for myself. And I was very like stringent. Like, don't tell me what to do. This is what I'm going to do. And this is how I'm going to do it. And I don't have time for your BS outside of what I want to do and the way that I want to do it. So I made no room for any flexibility inside of my life. So I wasn't creating space for him. And, you know, we wouldn't be here today if I was still in that space of just do. And frankly, I might not be here today, you know, going through that adrenal fatigue, something that I kept seeing as I was going through this spiritual journey of moving from doing to being. The message that I kept getting constantly was that I was going to end up in the hospital and die. So I might not even be here right now.
I mean, it's totally possible, right? I mean, that story about how, you know, you and Nate getting started was with you being so busy and stuff, and you having to create space for partnership. I was the same way, you
Mhm.
know. I mean, I there's no way it would have worked. I would have attracted him, but I would have never hang on to him.
That's
He
exactly
would
it.
not have tolerated that. He would have been like, I just can't tolerate this shit. You know, what, it wouldn't have mattered how much money, how successful, how famous, how any of that was, it would have never worked for him. And, you know, when I met him and I had realized that I had met my match, I very quickly said, you know, this is not sustainable. I don't have any room for this person in my life, but I really want to make this space for this person.
Mhm.
And, you know, did I need to have everything come crashing down? No, I had, you know, when I go big, right? But, you know, the thing is that um, I'm good with that. You know, everything that has occurred in my life, as painful as it has been to go through, it has always worked out better for me.
Yeah.
So the forced rest that came from the shutdowns, the forced moving me into what my life purpose actually is. You know, it's been painful. It's been messy. You know, God bless my husband for sticking through it on all of this. You know, God bless my family for sticking through it on all of this. You know, and, you know, God bless my friends for, you know, holding the trash can for me when I just need to get it all out. You know, I just, as messy and painful as it has been, I would do it exactly the same all over again, because from it came the awareness of being in, you know, all of your series of these moments. You
Mhm.
know, you're going through the mud, go through it, but like, smell the mud. How does it smell? How does it feel? You know, did you get it in your mouth? Is it in your eye? You know, what about your ears? You know, like, really like experiencing those breakdowns and like sitting in it and moving through it is really the being part of the doing. And I think we mindlessly do so much without actually being in that moment of the doing. So we end up missing it entirely. And
Mhm.
we look back and we're like, oh my gosh, I said I would call my friend back 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, I had that experience just last night. I have a friend in Tucson. I hardly ever get to talk to her because she has such a busy life.
Yeah.
And, you know, she says to me, when you get to Texas and you get settled in, let me know. We've been here for 3 months. And I got a text from her yesterday. Are you okay? I haven't heard from you at all. And I looked and said, oh my gosh, I was supposed to get back with her 3 months ago. 3 months ago.
Yep.
But you know, that's just what happens, right? You get to doing,
Yep.
and then you just, time just goes by. So
Mhm.
I think, you know, being more while you're doing will keep you more aware of what you might be actually missing.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking earlier when we were talking about this topic about when when your husband's out doing the farm work, right? You guys have a big property and you have a farm, and so your husband will be out there farming, and you would get to these places sometimes where you like didn't even really want to go out because it meant you were going to have to do the work. But
Mm-hmm.
he wants you to come out just to be with him while he does the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I grew up on a farm, and while we were growing up, we had, I think it was like 500 head of pigs, which means 500 pigs. So we had a big pig farm operation, and that's all that I remember when I was a kid. You went outside, not necessarily to play. Like, I'm sure that we did lots of playing. Like, I can tell you some really dumb stuff, like sledding off of buildings in the winter and just crazy stuff like that. We obviously played, but looking back on that time in my life, I remember saying, I hate pigs. Like, I hate them. I'll never get them. I don't want to do that ever again in my life. And it was funny because over the last couple of weeks, I had this realization because my husband's been asking, like, we should get pigs, we should get chickens. And I'm like, no, not happening. I'm not doing it again. I can't. I have trauma from when I was a child, whatever. But I was reflecting on all of this, and it was this realization that it wasn't actually the pigs. It was that there was always something to do that had to be done. And I never got that space to just be and to play as much as my perception recalls. Obviously, my perception is locked into all of it was work, and that's not absolute truth either. I'm sure I had lots of fun, but the way that I look at it is that way. And I started to notice that with the farm here, that it's always work. There's always something that needs to be done. And I've got to be out there and doing things alongside my husband. And it was this realization that he likes to be doing. That man can't really sit still. So he likes to be doing things. He likes to have projects on the go. He tinkers with things. This is the way that he evolves, is through doing certain things. And I mean, he's not like go, go, go and get her done. He's just, think of an old man putzing around. That's the way that he does things, which is beautiful. But he would ask me all the time, come outside and help me. Can you come outside and help me? Can you come outside and help me? And I would go, and I started to notice this resentment coming up. Like, I don't want to be doing all the time. I need to rest. And I kind of checked myself in that moment. Like, who says that you have to go out and work? Well, he does. Did he? Or did he just simply ask you? Does he really want you to help? Like, actually physically do things? Or is there like one thing that he wants you to hold because he needs a set of hands, and then he just wants you to sit there and be with him? Well, it's the second. He likes it when I'm around and I can talk to him and entertain him and, whatever, tell him funny stories. I don't know. I usually bring the dog out there, and then I'm also an extra helping hand if he needs something or whatever. But he just likes me to be there with him while he's doing these things. And it's so funny because with that in mind, on Sunday or Saturday, I can't remember what it was, but I was just spent. And he's like, I need some help. We're growing a giant pumpkin. So we needed to build like this little house for the giant pumpkin, and in the interim until we skin the big greenhouse and all of this stuff. So he's like, I just need some help and whatever. And I was like, oh my God. And I went out there and I could see he didn't actually need my help. Like, he's got all of the tools, he's got all of the boards laid out. He needed me to hold one thing for 3 minutes, and that's it. And so I did said thing. And then I just pulled out the chair, and then I sat down in the sun, and I just went, the rest of the afternoon I sat with him and I was able to relax. He just wanted me to be there. But it was this reframe in my own mind that of what he needed and why he was asking me to be there. And the reframe of work and the reframe of I'm allowed to say no, I'm spent, I can't do any more work, my body is taxed, or I just want to relax and have a fire, I just want to drink a beer, if you will, like whatever it is. Finding your voice, knowing what you need and asking for it or giving it to yourself is so incredibly important, and that's not a fixed thing. That is something that is evolving over time.
I think, when I think about like tips for how to be less doing and more being, or just recognizing the difference between doing and being, one of the things that I found really interesting as I was evolving and beginning to understand myself and how I relate to doing versus being, one of the things that was really interesting was human design. So, we both have done our human design charts. We both know what human design we are. I'm a projector and you are a generator, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, I think you are.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think you are. But when I learned about being a projector, I learned that for my particular type of human design, being a projector is that, the ability to be able to like see into things, see into people, see into that takes a certain amount of like energy. And
Mhm.
as such, my human design being a projector requires a lot of rest, which is hilarious considering I never wanted to rest, right? I was always doing. And so ultimately, the constantly doing, the constantly being in motion, the not taking time for myself was going to wear out my physical body because my physical body was not designed to do constantly. It's not.
Mm. Mhm.
It's actually meant to do like nothing, which is also not me. I can't just not do nothing. I could do a lot of nothing, but I can't do all of nothing. I
Mhm.
just, being a potato every day of my life would just drive me mad. But
Yeah.
I think that, I now recognize that I require a lot more like me time and relaxing time in order to be effective at my doing,
Mhm.
to where I don't fry out my body. I don't tax my adrenal system. My adrenals are trashed from the, nearly, 3 decades of constant going and doing,
Mhm. Yep.
you know? I
I
mean, from
Yep.
the time I started working, I never stopped
Mhm.
going.
Mhm.
And I'm
You're
sure I
always
don't remember
doing.
a lot from my, childhood, but I would bet my parents would say that I was a pretty active child. So maybe my entire life, I
Mhm.
was always, going and doing. And, I was in my 40s when I learned about human design. So I spent 40 years doing that,
Mhm.
going and
Yeah.
not resting.
Yeah. Even for me, I'm a generator. So I think that means that I should be able to do do a lot. and and I can. And something that there was a lot of things that helped me. The first thing that really helped me in this transition from doing a lot to being was the reminder that when I am full, meaning like when I am have had a good rest, when I am in that flow state, when I am inspired to take action, when I'm excited, whatever, when I'm in that perfect state, which I've been there before, I can get more done in an hour or two than most people can do in a week. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And it was also recognizing the contrast that when I was sluggish because I was hungry or I ate garbage because I was too hungry to eat anything other than, french fries and a burger or whatever. And when I was sleep deprived because I would, I wouldn't go to bed until midnight and I would be up at, I would try and be a part of the 5 a.m. club. I'd have little to no sleep. When I was in that space and I was trying to force things to happen, it would actually take me 10 times longer. So, with that in mind, that mantra of when I'm in, this is the way I would say it, when I'm in, I can do more in an hour than most people can do in a week. And the opposite, when I'm out, everything takes me 10 times longer when I'm trying to force it to happen. Now, with that mantra, I started to take steps back slowly because I was so not committed, but I was so enslaved to, my life has to look like this for me to make money. If I don't do this, I won't make money. So there was a fear, a huge fear there that I needed to address and acknowledge and let go. So I started with Sunday. First, it was a half a day, literally a half a day off on Sunday. The morning I could do whatever I wanted. And then eventually, after a couple of weeks, when my nervous system had stabilized enough, I could go the whole day. But I remember when I took the first Sunday off ever and said, I'm not going to be a part of any meetings on Sunday. I'm not doing any appointments. This is my hard line. I'm taking all of Sunday off to do whatever I want to do. I would get these nervous bouts of like, oh my God, I should be doing something. Oh my God, and I would have to remind myself of that mantra, I need to rest so that I can fuel up for what's coming, so that I have the energy. And I'd have to like convince myself. And then I started taking off, another day a week, half a day on Thursdays. I don't know why I chose Thursdays. The Thursday was the day that I chose. So I would take half the day, and then I started taking the full day, and I started to do it in baby steps and really paying attention to my body of what do I need? Do I need sleep? Do I need a meditation? Do I need food? Do I need water? And unapologetically listening and providing for myself. And I became the focal point of my life. Me being at my best meant that all the things that I touched could also be at their best. And it was this huge reframe for me, but I did it slowly and steadily. And it's been a beautiful thing. I went from not being able to relax to I am in most moments. I'm not perfect, but much better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and I think that, knowing what it is that you really require, and then doing those things that feed your physical body and feed your soul.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad used to say when I was a little kid, find something that you love, learn how to make money at it, and you will never work a day in your life.
Mhm.
And it's such a wonderful thing to say. I'm not sure who actually was the original author of that quote, but it's such a beautiful idea, right? And I think that you can find love in anything that you do. you know
Mhm.
it's I worked at a plant nursery when I was a young teenager, and I just moved out of my mom and dad's house, and I had my first apartment, and I had to work 3 jobs in order to afford to live in an apartment by myself with no roommates. And so I would wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would go to work at the plant nursery, and I hated having to get up that early. Like, it just was so awful. I've never been an eager get up early girl. And when I was younger, I would get up earlier, maybe like 7. Now I'm a 9 or 10 o'clock girl. But but like having to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning to be at the plant nursery at 4:30 was just like pulling teeth. But the thing that I loved about being there was all of the plants. It was like being in like this little fairy garden jungle, right? And that wasn't my role. I didn't get to water the plants. That wasn't my job. My job was to service customers, but, like at the register. But the thing is like every day that I got up to go do that job, I got up because I loved going and saying hello to the plants.
Aw.
So it became less of a job and more of like this cool thing I did in the morning. It
Mhm.
made getting up just a little bit easier.
Mhm.
But if that wasn't some sort of nourishment to my soul, it would have never lasted.
Mhm.
It's not sustainable.
Mhm.
The sustainability comes from listening to what your body needs and listening to what your soul desires.
Mhm.
Because if the two of them are in agreement, you can create anything. You can be
100%.
anything. You can do anything
Mhm.
and be successful.
Yeah. And a lot of the conditions, maybe even all the conditions within our mind are placed by us, or our environment, or the way we grew up, or whatever, but truly we've kept them, we've decided to keep them. And the biggest learning that I've had over the last 5 years is really that anything is possible, and that this is my jam, possibilities. I don't believe that there's very many things that are absolute. And when we start questioning the way that we think about things, Trisha, she reiterated, that comment of becoming enslaved to the idea that I have to do this to make money, it has to look like this to make money. That was a belief system, a perception that I had, that I was continuously choosing over and over again because of the way that I lived my life. So I had to start unchoosing it. Like, what else is possible? Is it, and questioning it, is it absolutely true that it has to look like this for me to make money? Have I ever made money and it didn't look like this? Oh, yeah, I have. That deal came out of nowhere. Oh, okay. So it's not an absolute. It doesn't apply to everything. So what else is possible? And I could start to lean in a different direction. Well, if this is possible, where money can come out of thin air, essentially a new client came out of nowhere, then why couldn't another one come out? And if I am in this space of really firmly planted in the seat that is me, and I am whole, like I have taken care of myself so well that I am nourished on the soul level, on an emotional level, on a physical level, whatever that being, if I could show up as that, how many more people would see me and be drawn to me, just simply because I'm standing in my own divine magic. And I started to play with this idea and think about what else was possible, and start to question the narrative that I had within my own mind, and replace it with something that would serve me in building the life that I truly wanted, instead of sacrificing my life and then eventually one day, hopefully, being able to live.
Boom.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, because we only have a few minutes left, what is one good tip that you have for our viewers on how to handle doing versus being? Not to put you on the spot.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Come back to this moment. Like when you find that you're in next Tuesday, of all the things that you need to get done tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day, come back to this moment and truly revel in the possibility of what is here in this moment. It's possible that you get more done than you expect. It's possible that things are easier than you expected them to be. It's possible that money comes out of nowhere. I've had students actually have money show up in their backyard out of the blue. Seriously, these things are possible. So coming back to this moment, you have and being present in this moment is the only thing that we truly have, because yesterday is already gone and tomorrow hasn't happened, and nor is it promised. So come back to this moment and get present, first with yourself, and then with the things that you're seeing going on outside. And when you change that perspective within, the perspective and what you see without also changes.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well,
exactly.
Exactly. Amazing. Is there anything that you would add in our, last couple of minutes here, Heather? No?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that that's probably the very best tip that anyone could get, is to just be, cognizant of where you're at in this moment and live in your series of right nows. Just, you know, it's you don't always have to be doing. You can just be in your life.
Mhm.
You can just be in your experience. I think that that's what's so powerful about meditation. It's a moment of beingness. You're not doing meditation. You
Oh.
are being in a place of meditation. You are being that soul nourishing moment of listening to, your cosmic universe talk to you. Just be. If you guys are liking this episode, don't forget to like with the like button and make sure you're subscribed and turn on the notifications so you don't miss an episode. We're here every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Eastern. I think that covered all of the time zones within the North American continent. Yeah, so we love doing the show. If you love us, give us some love on social media or tell your friends, share with the world.
We are 33 subscribers away from getting our own custom link. So make sure you tell all of your friends to subscribe so we can be, searchable on YouTube.
Yeah. Hey, and if you have multiple accounts, sign up on those accounts too, because every sign up counts.
Every subscription helps. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we will see you next week, Tuesday. And we are very grateful for you coming and sharing in this hour.